Hello, everyone, and welcome to On Seagal, the only podcast on the internet all about everyone's favorite Aikido master, Steven Seagal. I am one of your hosts, Chris Dashu, the host of the Culture Cast.
And I am Trevor Gumble, and I am also co-host of On Seagal and occasional co-host of the Culture Cast. And Chris, I think it's been burning when I pee lately. I think I have a venereal disease because it feels like a fire down below.
I had to work hard to get to that one. I feel like.
Yeah, I really did.
I thought you were gonna say something about a fire crotch. I mean, I guess you did say a fire crotch of a different sort, I guess.
Yeah, but it wouldn't work as good.
If you
this way, though.
If you don't know what we're talking about and you clicked on this by accident, well, hello, welcome. You're listening to a podcast that's an audio experience.
Please don't turn us off.
Yeah. But if you are here, you know what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about a little film from 1997 that, well, in a lot of ways, one might say it was a turning point for our dear friend, Mr. Steven Seagal. But we're talking about a film that came out in 1997, and it was his final film released in theaters. It's a film chock full of country western singers pointing guns at people. We're talking about 1997's Fire Down Below. So the film is directed by Felix Enriquez Alcala, and it stars the one and only Steven Seagal as Jack Taggart, a man from the EPA who goes to a small town in Kentucky to stop Chris Christopherson from dumping cyanide into the water supply. Yes, this is actually the plot of this movie. And no, I'm not kidding. Steven Seagal falls in love with Marg Helgenberger, a woman who is attempting to have a relationship with the cinematic equivalent of a 2x4. Harry Dean Stanton is also in the film playing a man who might be slow, but we don't actually know because the movie doesn't actually know. And there's also a weird subplot with Stephen Lang playing an incestuous brother to Marg Helgenberger. Boy, yeah, this movie's a mouthful, and this is a lot to get out of the way out of it right at the top. But Trevor, what did you think of Fire Down Below, a movie I know you had never seen before?
I'm going to say this right off the bat. This is one of Seagal's best performances.
Yeah.
Because this Seagal actually tries to emote. He actually tries to be charming, to be, likable. And unfortunately, it's in a movie that is cut to hell. This movie was butchered, man. It's written by Jeb Stewart. And if that name sounds familiar to you, he was the screenwriter of what many consider an action classic, if not the best action film ever made, Die Hard. And yeah. And
I thought you were going to say The Fugitive, also an action classic.
He wrote that too, yeah. I don't know how he got roped into this. Maybe it was a victim of one of Seagal's little rewrites. But all I know is his script and the final product got chopped up to hell. Like, there are tons and tons of deleted scenes in this film. And you can tell because there are moments in this film where it seems to cut out of nowhere. Like, it's a sudden cut. Like, it seems like they're in the middle of about to say something and it cuts to the next scene.
Yeah, there's not a lot of information on Wikipedia or other sources about this movie. I mean, we do know that there are a lot of deleted scenes in this movie, probably similarly to On Deadly Ground. We know that movie had a lot of cuts made to it, right? Like a literal hour-long finale.
Oh God!
I think this movie had similar things going on, clearly, and I am in agreement with you 100%. This, I think, is Steven Seagal's best post Under Siege performance, which are the bigger movies that he's doing, less the cop on the ground in Brooklyn beating the shit out of people with pool balls and a sock. Like, he's not doing that anymore. He's taking on big worldly or global or bigger threats like an entire town and I guess aquifer being destroyed by Chris Christopherson's character.
Yeah.
All that aside, Steven Seagal is really good in this movie, but he's also again, like he's restraining himself, but he, like you said, he's restraining himself from doing the fucking whisper talking shit that he was doing in Glimmerman, because he was doing it in Glimmerman. He doesn't do it a lot here. He's, like you said, he's kind of charming, and he does have some good comebacks and one-liners and quips. I mean, he's not like without the charm here, and he can turn it on. It's just like, yeah, you turned it on a little too late, dude, because at this point, your career is going to be very different post this movie.
And as I was watching his film and his performance, I was thinking, this is the same guy from like the China thing and Absolution, China Salesman and Absolution and all those movies. That those performances and this performances are fucking night and day. Because in those performances, he's just whispering his way to the end. In this film, he's actually, you know, he's got personality. He's got somewhat of a charm to him. I'm not quite sure I believe him and Mark Helgenberger as a couple, but then again,
no, I don't believe them as a couple at all.
He said, like, behind the scenes, he said she's a great actress, but she's not, like, you know, stunningly beautiful. He said something to that effect.
Typical Seagal, bro. Come on, dude. Don't do that. Like,
I know I'm not doing anything. I'm just saying.
Not you, him. Don't do that. It's a bad. I mean, look, it's a bad look. He's one of those dudes that sometimes he just should know better, right?
Yeah, foot and mouth disease.
Right.
This film has a better cast than it deserves. I mean, fucking Harry Dean Stanton, Mark Helgenberger, Stephen Lang, Chris Christopherson. Well, Chris Christopherson, he's done his fair share of shit.
Yeah, but he's also done his fair share of actual acting performances.
And he's not really that much in the film until like the second half. Because in like the first half, it's Chris Christopherson's son and a bunch of like thugs, henchmen. Because apparently people have there have been mysterious deaths in this city, or this town rather, of other EPA agents and shit like that, because they keep sending them there and they keep mysteriously dying. Mysteriously. They show in the flashback in the beginning, like they get like fucking shot in the head. His friend was one of tried to investigate and he ended up getting killed. Which, by the way, if you're going to use John Deal in your film, don't give him just a glorified cameo, man.
I mean, John Deal of such films as Jurassic Park 3 and Remote.
And Madhouse with John Larroquette and Kirstie Alley.
Do you buy Steven Seagal as an EPA agent? Because I don't.
I don't. No, I didn't buy it in On Deadly Ground either.
No, and I find it very amusing that they keep trying to pass this.
This could be a fucking sequel to the On Deadly Ground, and I probably believe you.
I'm there's in a lot of ways, there's part of me surprised that it's not. I mean, the only thing he doesn't bring to this role is the kind of, again, because it's real, you know, kind of folklore and religion that he was speaking of with the indigenous people in that movie. But there's none of that in this movie, but I'm kind of surprised that there's not.
Yeah.
Because it was like that movie was just chock full of all this like bogus interpretations of religion and folklore of the indigenous people. And like, that's the only thing this movie's missing. And then it would be that character from that movie. This
is the only Steven Seagal film that even mentions the concept of God, or God being like, you know, in like being even mentioned in his films.
Well, yeah, because you've got Levon Helm playing the Reverend, drummer of the band.
But you see what I'm saying? Usually when you see a Seagal film, he's usually going these ancient, like mystic.
But it's his like whacked out interpretations of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's none of that here, but that's the only thing that would lead me to believe it's a different character. But he acts the same way as the dude from On Deadly Ground. He's the and
absolutely.
But again, like it's kind of always just Seagal doing himself. He really in this movie does come off a little. He's charming when he needs to be, but I think you're right. He and Mark Helgenberger do not have chemistry.
I don't believe it for a fucking second. Sorry. No. And the film is okay. So, I mean, we have it almost got cartoonish when it came to the henchmen.
I don't think that helps because of the people who are playing them.
I mean, Mark Colley, we have Mark Colley, who a lot of people probably recognize from, he's a singer also, but I know him a lot from the Punisher, the Thomas Jane Punisher film. He played the Johnny Cash-like motherfucker in that film.
Played a similar character to the character he plays in this movie.
Yeah.
Just a guy who's doing what somebody else is telling him to do. It just happens to be an assassin.
It just kept getting cartoonish to me because they would say the same thing to Seagal. You better watch yourself or we're going to get you, and he ends up kicking their ass. They recover, say that same shit again to Stallone and get their ass kicked again. It's like a fucking Warner Brothers cartoon and they're the fucking Wile E. Coyote. Or they're like Home Alone villains in terms of.
It doesn't help that our lead is operating out in broad daylight going in. I mean, at one point he's talking with Lee Von Helm about Lee Von Helm's like, I'm going to testify. If you get me on the stand, I'll testify. And they're standing within earshot of the people that they're going to be testifying against.
I didn't even have to know they were in earshot to think, oh, well, he's dead now.
Yeah. But
he said, well, I'll testify. I'm like, well, you're fucked.
But right.
Because that's how predictable it was.
But to be fair, like in another movie, it's like you don't have to see them up on the hill to know that's what's going to happen. Because again, that's normally what happens.
This movie feels the need to show it.
Right. And it's like, that's kind of the issue with this movie. It's like, this movie is kind of written. This movie is written in a way that is a little bit too, and then. This
movie thinks we're stupid, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, again, it's an and then movie. This happened, and then this happened, and then the Reverend died, and then the son, and then this, and it's like, but what was the point? What was holding this together? Again, I think Seagal is okay enough in this movie to kind of hold it together throughout the almost 2-hour runtime, but yeah, it's kind of a weird tonal mix-up because the actors playing a lot of the characters in this movie are country western singers that are not particularly good at acting. There was an
abundance of those. You have like Travis Tritt, Randy Travis, fucking Marty
Stewart, but Marty Stewart's just playing himself. But then you have Chris Christopherson and Mark Colley.
Yeah,
Lee Von Helm. I mean, he's not country, but he is a musician.
Speaking of country, I did like the music in the film. The score and the music were good.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah, it was decent little,
I don't dislike this movie. I just think that this movie is really a mess from the plot because, again, I mean, you have what seems to be this dastardly villain of Chris Christopherson, but he feels so removed from most of the movie and most of what's going on.
He does not feel like a threat.
And villains that hire other people to do their bidding never do, right? I mean, he's like, oh, my son, go deal with them. And my son will hire people.
This film with the Christopherson character just goes in circles. It's always the same thing. The son calling the dad because he fucked up again. The son calling the dad because his henchman got beat up. And it just keeps repeating that until finally Chris Christopherson doesn't even go to the town. I think he meets him. Seagal ends up meeting him at his casino.
No, he goes to the town at one point when they're having their like festival or whatever.
Okay, sorry.
But again, that's like 2/3 of the way into the movie by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, I was talking about this with Dustin on Bollywood Cinema Club, another show that I do, and we were talking about Tigers in the High, and the villain in that movie is not a threat when he doesn't have a gun.
And just like Christopherson, if he's
not
a gun,
he's not a threat. He's not a threat, which means he has to hire other. He's just like Hans Gruber, right? Hans Gruber is not much of a threat when he doesn't have a gun. Oh, you're one of them. Like, I mean, that's what we're talking about. When he has a gun, though, he's confident and in his ability to kill you. And Chris Christopherson's the same way. So the moment Steven Seagal gets his hands on him is not going to be rewarding.
But the difference between Christopherson and Rickman is Rickman's character was written very intelligent. His character is smart.
But he also surrounds himself with fucking goons that are memorable too.
Yes, and he usually has them do his dirty work. Like
right. In this movie, there aren't memorable goons, and none of them are physical threats either.
They're basically no names. It's like henchman number 1, they might as well be called.
No, but I mean, I'm talking about the country western people. Like, they're not threats. Is Randy Travis a fucking threat? Is Travis Tritt a threat?
Mark Colley is a skinny motherfucker in this movie, and I'm
He's
like,
a small dude.
he's a small dude. And no, I'm sorry, I will never ever buy Randy Travis as a villainous threat to anything.
No, I mean, the only person I kind of halfway believe is Stephen Lang, but that's because he's a
Well,
big
that's because it's
guy.
fucking Stephen Lang.
Yeah, he's
Because
a
Stephen
big.
Lang has proven himself as a villain actor.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say at this point he was known for being a villain. I'm just talking about like screen presence. He's a bigger guy. He can stand. Look, he can stand up against Seagal and not be dwarfed by him because Seagal is like what 6'3" or 4.
Yeah,
He's not a
yeah.
small guy. That's the other thing. Nobody is going to fight Seagal believably and be a foot shorter than him. It has to be someone who's about his height, just like with Schwarzenegger and Stallone. You can't have someone who's smaller than them fight them and go, oh, this is a fight that I don't already know the outcome.
But Chris, it goes to the fact that there's no tension in that regard because we all know Steven is not going to get hit, not once. They're never ever going to land a punch. They're never ever going to land an injury on him.
Yeah, but this is us with 20. This is us with 2020 vision, though. Like,
yeah, but I still think back then people probably knew that.
Yeah, but I think it just speaks to a bigger issue. It's a bigger issue where that's just one of the easy ways to kind of highlight it. It's just a lack of self-awareness about what Steven Seagal's character needs to be up against. He should never be up against people that are these Eric Bogosian types or the Alan Rickman types or the fucking Chris Christopherson types. He should be going up against someone like Vernon Wells with Commando, right? Yeah. Someone who, when you see him up against Seagal standing next to him or tussling, you say to yourself, this is someone who is a match for this person. And look, I'm not saying it's because Steven Seagal can't fight someone who's smaller than him. It's because Steven Seagal is a bigger guy height-wise, and it's very obvious when it's not someone who is physically of the same kind of build or stature, and it's hard to get me to believe it. And then you just, in every single one of these movies, it's like William Sadler, for fuck's sake. That guy's not intimidating to Steven Seagal. No. Bogosian, Chris Christopherson. None of these actors are intimidating because they're just actors. And you got to give him someone to actually like play off of physically, like a Bill Duke or a Vernon Wells or someone who is Ventura, even someone who's his size.
Well, another thing is it's hard to do that when they keep throwing henchmen at you with no names. They don't give him, even when the henchmen are his size, it doesn't matter because you don't know who the fuck they are. They're just random henchmen. And he's just beating up random henchmen. And really, there's like, they're not a threat because they don't even have a name.
No. Well, and again, I mean, the ones that do have a name, like his son, are just kind of, again, like poorly written.
His son's a pussy.
Yeah, but he's a poorly written character. He's a very generic, stereotypical character that you've seen before.
He's the spoiled brat who gets daddy to fix everything.
Right. I mean,
he thinks he's a big boy like his dad, and eventually gets brought down to earth by Seagal.
Seen that in other Seagal movies. Seen that in other acts.
No, yeah, me too. I mean, there are a lot of shit here that you like. Oh, I've seen that before.
Right. So again, like it works. My point is like it works other places, and it works other places to the point where you don't point it out. But in this movie, Brad Hunt is not given much to do. I don't think it is a reflection on him as an actor.
Brad Hunt was the other henchman, was he?
That was
Mark
his
Colley
son.
And Brad. Oh, that was okay. I forgot who played the other henchman. Opposite Mark Colley.
Ernie Lively.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I don't even remember the henchmen's names.
Ernie Lively, I believe, is related to Blake Lively in some respect.
Oh, I thought you meant Robin. Well, they are related. Robin and Blake are related.
So that's his daughter. So
really,
yeah. Look, I think for me, ultimately, with a movie like this, where
Mhm.
you have this quote environmental message unquote, and again, we've
Yeah,
seen this already now with Seagal.
it's
I
not
think the
original.
I
Yeah,
think well, I think the original I think the originality is neither here nor there. I think it's done better here than in On Deadly Ground. It feels less tongue clicking and kind of like, oh, you should feel bad because you use oil. It's just like it's
yeah.
bad to dump toxic waste places. Can't we all agree on that? It's like, yes.
And let me ask you something. Was the subplot about Mark Helgenberger as a child being molested by her brother necessary?
It wasn't just her brother, it was her brother and her dad, because that's implied why she killed their
No,
dad,
but
right?
Steven. Well, no. Steven Seagal basically figures everything out. I don't know how the fuck he did it. I mean, just
He saw
because
the
she was nervous around it.
microfilm. He saw the microfilm at the library with
Oh,
her talking about her murdering the father.
the brother actually killed the father, but wanted her to take the blame because she was a juvenile. Nothing had happened to her, and it was self defense. When in fact, I okay. The way I interpreted how Lang was Steven Seagal was telling the story is that the father didn't do anything, and it was the brother who did it, and the father found out and got pissed, and that's when he killed him. It wasn't the father molesting her; it was Stephen Lang's character was molesting her.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I got from Steven Seagal telling what actually happened. Like the father got pissed when he
How did
found
he
out.
figure that out?
I asked you that just a few minutes ago. I
I
don't
know.
know how the fuck he figured this
I'm
out.
answering with a question. How did he figure that out?
I have no idea because he was very fucking specific in like what actually happened.
My God, how does the movie really doesn't explain that very well, does it?
It doesn't explain a lot of things. It really doesn't.
It kind of expects you as the audience to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, but then it shows us the villains hiding in a few inches away in case we don't know that it's them there. And I mean, it was just being Seagal. It was just Steven Seagal being Steven Seagal again. I mean, it's
But
okay.
not in a bad way. I didn't dislike this movie because of Steven Seagal. I
No, I
actually
didn't either.
no, and that. But here's the thing: a lot of the movies we watch, it's he is almost a non-issue in them, right? I mean, a lot of the things that we watch that are contemporary
Yeah.
are, Absolution or China Salesman or Attrition, where he is advertised as a big part and he's not a big part. I mean, in some of these movies he is, but in a lot of these movies, at least the more recent ones, he is
Mm-hmm.
not the main actor, but he's advertised as such.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of whiplash to watch a movie where he's advertised as the main actor and he is the main actor because again,
Yeah.
at this point in 97, say what you will about the movie, but his performance is not the problem with the movie.
No, it is definitely not the problem.
He might be a little wooden, but I feel like at this point, if you're complaining about Steven Seagal being wooden, I don't think you've seen other Steven Seagal movies that were coming out before this one because he's kind of always just weird, but like being weird and being wooden are two different things. If you have an actor who's normally not wooden and all of a sudden they're giving stilted dialogue, yeah, they're wooden. But if you have someone who is always kind of weird, like he is, idiosyncratic, one might say,
Yeah.
then it's not him being stilted. That's just who he is, and you just have to deal with it.
Well, it's like I said earlier. This is the film where he tries his hardest to be the most relatable and likable.
I think he kind of comes off that way in a really big way.
I mean, he does a lot of sweet things for Mark Helgenberger's character. I mean, she sells honey to make a living, and apparently she doesn't sell much honey. So when she buys groceries, she has to sacrifice some things. So then Steven Seagal goes up to the counter, says, "Okay, he takes the things that she took out and he buys them." And she goes, "You know what? I'll take all the honey too." He buys every jar of honey. And, so basically he's, doing this quote unquote romantic or whatever.
Again, it would be creepy if someone else was doing it.
We were talking about this earlier with the whole Dobler Dahmer theory from How I Met Your Mother. If I did that, if I bought every single merchandise of a girl I like, that's a red flag. And he
Maybe.
buys all her honey. She sees in the back of his truck, which, by the way, why didn't she see it when she was putting the stuff in the back in the first place?
I don't know, cinema sins.
Oh.
Gotcha.
Right here, buddy. Right here.
What kind of commentary are you up? This is what do they say? This is what passes for commentary on the internet these days. I'm kidding, Trevor. I'm kidding.
It's just, and their relationship is
not believable at
not
all.
in the fucking slightest.
Well, and look, here's the thing, though. I mean, I think we could both agree. Steven Seagal now is maybe not my cup of tea. Steven Seagal in 1997, a good-looking guy. It's not that it's because Steven Seagal is like some sort of hideous goblin of a human being and Mark Helgenberger is a 10. That's not what's going on. We're not trying to make that statement.
No.
It's just that when they're on screen together, they're not believable because they don't have any chemistry.
Their personality types clash.
Well, and the character that she's portraying, I find it hard to believe that she would really kind of be into someone like Seagal. Because he's just kind of, again, he's nice, but there is this moment where she's like, hey, was any of this real? Or were you just doing this so that you could not get in my pants, but get in my filing cabinet?
And he goes straight to, no, that's not the scene where he says, I'm thinking about moving here, buying a little house. And
no, that's he's talking with Christopherson. Yeah.
Yeah. When they tell him to get out of town.
No, but she puts him on the spot and he's like, hey, am I, was this real or was this all a put on? And he, is like, no, I like you. And it's like, okay. Like, and he's not like, he doesn't feel pandering when he says it. It feels genuine.
No. Yeah.
But her and him just I just don't think it works. They just don't have any chemistry. And I don't think it's their fault. I think it's the script.
No, it's definitely the script. I mean, here's the thing about this podcast we're doing. When we critique films of Steven Seagal, we're not necessarily critiquing Seagal. Because you have to have a film around him for him to work with. And unfortunately, he just gets these shitty scripts all the time.
I don't think this is a shitty script. I think this movie just I don't think that. Look, here's the thing. The romance in this movie is forced. That's what it is. There's no need for it. It's almost inconsequential to the plot of the movie. It's inconsequential to the main storyline. The storyline of the city. The city is threatened. It doesn't matter if she's being threatened because she's part of the city as a whole. The city is being threatened, and the aquifer is being threatened by a character dumping toxic waste into it, right?
Yeah.
The romance is like the B or C plot. Like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't even need to be a plot.
It doesn't need to be in the movie. It's forced.
The writer didn't know how to write two characters, a man and a woman, and not have them, because he thought the audience would just expect them to get together in the end.
But my point is, you don't have to have either. You don't have to have her character.
That's what
in the
I mean.
Movie.
That's what I mean.
Right.
It's
no, again, this is in the era of the 90s where every movie had to have a romance.
Well, I mean, if you were a movie and you had a lead man and a lead woman and they weren't villains, they were going to end up together.
But she's not the lead in this movie. She's
She's the lead woman. She's the biggest female part in the film.
Right, but my point is, because she's the biggest female part in the movie, if you take her out of the movie, there's literally nothing else. So she feels very tacked on to the movie because she doesn't even her brother kind of factors into the plot, but not really. Like, again, we live in a time now where you can make an action movie without the hero needing a love interest.
Exactly.
And this is a movie where the love interest is so unnecessary that it kind of bogs the movie down, and it kind of doesn't really gel because Mark Helgenberger and Steven Seagal don't have any chemistry. And so the movie would benefit from
they could be playing brother and sister, and I would lose nothing in the plot.
It would actually probably work better because you're not expecting there to be a believable romance. Look, this in a lot of ways feeds into things that we've talked about with more recent movies where there's an Absolution where a woman is kissing Seagal and she looks uncomfortable doing it. And again, I think now it's probably informed by a lot of stuff, but in 1997, he didn't look comfortable in that relationship with her because I don't think Steven Seagal is the kind of character and character actor in a lot of ways, because he's more a character actor than a lead actor.
Yeah.
He feels like the kind of character actor and actor who doesn't need a female character to play off of. He is a big enough personality and performance that those actors will get in the way of his performance because he just it just let him go on his own. Like, just think of the first couple movies. They were good without female companionship. I mean, they were there, but they, again, weren't great. We talked about it then. They were just felt kind of as forced into the movie then as they do now.
Steven Seagal movies don't need a love interest.
No,
and
not
truthfully,
at all.
Fans of Steven Seagal don't care. They don't go to Seagal films to see him hook up with the lady. They see him. They want to see his films for him to kick ass and destroy the bad guy. They don't see it to see if a believable romance happens between him and Kelly LeBrock, or him and Mark Helgenberger, or him and Eric Eleniak. Which, by the way, that was the most forced of them all. By the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most off-putting of all of them.
And watching him kiss his female leads, maybe it's because we know what we know now, but it feels like you're watching that scene from Back to the Future Part 2 where Marty is watching that video about Biff Tannen, and it gets to the part where he kisses Marty's mother after they got married.
Sure.
That's how uncomfortable it feels. That's how awkward it feels. It's like all the girls in that he's the co-star with him are Leah Thompson in Back to the Future Part 2, and he's Biff Tannen. Because they don't want to be there. Like the last film we watched.
Yeah, absolutely.
Out of fucking nowhere.
That's what I was saying. Like, it doesn't, when we're commenting on how out of place it feels, it's better just to not include it. And honestly, that's kind of where I'm at with like Steven Seagal movies and romance subplots. Like, they feel
how much of that do you think is Seagal's say?
I don't know. This is the 90s. There were love interests in all these movies. There was love interest in On Deadly Ground. There was love interest, like you mentioned, in Under Siege. There wasn't one in Under Siege 2, but that's because that was his fucking niece. And if it hadn't been his niece, it would have been a love interest. And he hit on her apparently behind the scenes. So
he hit on the bartender, though.
But yeah, okay, right. But like, that's it. But like, again, like Under Siege 2 might be the best handling of romance we've seen of Seagal because it doesn't force anything.
Yeah. I mean, he flirts with the bartender, but nothing really ever comes of it.
And that's believable. But like in this movie, like Mark Helgenberger would not be into someone like him, and he would not be into someone like her because he doesn't need to be. It's like they try to make him more human by having him have a relationship, but I think it exposes how not unhuman his character is, but how just much of a character his character is, not a really fully realized person. Well, because again, Steven Seagal is playing a character. Even when he's just doing himself, that's such a idiosyncratic person that that's Seagal. He's just, like we said, he's just playing himself in these movies. That's our perception of it.
Well, and his earlier films, like in a couple of his films, he was married. His character's married. And that's a little more believable because that can factor into the plot of the film. You know, the villain
was that Sharon Stone, right?
Yeah, Sharon. She was barely in that film.
Right.
She was, which one was it? Out for Justice?
I think so. One of the ones where he gets, I don't know, all those movies kind of run together.
Anyway, but yeah,
she was good in it, but she wasn't in it enough to matter, just like Mark Helgenberger should have been in this movie if that was the point. It's just Seagal doesn't need anything because he's so specific of the kinds of things that work for his movies. And romance has no point or part in any of these successful
Neither does like I said, neither does the molestation subplot.
Well, I don't even know what the point of that was.
There was no point. That's what I'm saying.
But why add it to the movie is my question.
I don't know. They wanted to add a little dark, disturbing.
They're trying to lean on the fact that it's taking place in Kentucky. Like, wow.
That's just tasteless, man.
But that's my point. It is kind of tasteless. Like a movie set in the South where a brother is molesting his sister. Wow.
That's a writer who has run out of ideas.
I mean, you
just go to the incest trope when it comes to the South.
Right. And somehow like
that's fucking low hanging fruit.
I'm not gonna be one to overlook making fun of the South as someone who spent a large portion of their young adulthood in the South, but that's low hanging fruit. But
if you're going to try to make a serious action film, don't make deliverance jokes.
My brother's trying to bang me. Yeah, it's like, what is it? The Beverly fucking Hillbillies? Like, I don't.
And
like,
Stephen Lang's. Let's talk about Stephen Lang's character.
Yes,
he comes into
let's.
the film. He comes into the film about what, halfway through, a little less, a little before halfway.
About the second, like kind of maybe like towards the beginning, middle of the
And
second act.
when you first meet him, he's wary of Seagal, but he's not like you don't suspect anything.
What? No, he comes into the scene like a fucking asshole. He's that dude that shows up and he's like, "Who the fuck are you and why are you in my house?" And it's like, he's a friend.
But some people could suspect he's just trying to be protecting his sister. I'm just saying.
It feels creepy right off the bat.
It does feel creepy, but I could see how some people would think he's just trying to be more protective. But then it starts the cracks start to show, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he goes, I've had a change of heart. Let me show you where their mine is. I want to take these bastards down. I'll testify. And then immediately, villain mode. Like, I'm going to take him down to the mine to bury him in the rubble. And before that, he's at the house with Mark Helgeberger, and he's manhandling her. And
you're a whore as well.
Yeah, slaps her, calls her a whore. She runs from him and locks herself in the bathroom, and he locks her in the bath. Well, no, he locks her in. Why is there a lock outside but not inside? Whatever. He locks her in the bathroom, and she's there for like hours before Steven Seagal. I don't know if he would have if she would have gotten out if he hadn't got. Well, he was going to go to her house anyway. I don't know, but it was just. Yeah.
I love how convoluted it is. I really do. Well, I appreciate how convoluted this movie is, because
then you have the mine scene where again, who's trying to get him? Henchman, no named henchman. But now it's fucking it's Stephen Lang and this big burly, bald dude. And how does Steven Seagal start? He dumps the chemical on the guy's face. Was it Lang or the
cyanide, bro? Put cyanide on him.
Yeah. So basically, and by the way, Steven Seagal, he steps in the cyanide. Wouldn't that have done something to his shoe?
No, I don't think so. I don't know if cyanide's corrosive.
I don't know what cyanide does to just being in contact or even near it. But it's not a good idea to be even near it when it's being dumped on someone.
That would stand to reason, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, he does his usual, kicks the ass of the henchman, goes to, the shootout. And what does he explodes the mine. No, he doesn't explode the mine.
They were going to blow the mine up with him in it, and he gets out, blow the mine up, and they're trap him in the mine.
Yeah. And he gets out. It's the slowest I've seen a guy escape a mine in a film in a while. But like, I kept thinking to myself, there's no way he could have gotten away. Not a fucking chance. Like, the way he was running and the direction he was running, I thought, no. And then I thought, well, if there's already the opening there, and it doesn't look like it's being affected by the explosion, he could have gotten out anyway. So their plan is flawed from the get-go.
Well, they were expecting to trap him and then get out.
Yeah, just
look, the problem with this movie ultimately becomes how convoluted it gets to where everybody is in on it, because we have, it's just these couple dudes that report to Chris Christopherson, and then it's all the cops in the town.
Oh, and then
it's the FBI agents, and then it's
his partner in the field office.
Yeah, it's like everybody is all of a sudden in on it, and it's like, okay, so Chris Christopherson is like all-seeing, all-knowing, far-reaching.
Yeah,
but he can't handle it in his own like hometown. Like, it feels like Chris Christopherson is once again
so fucking predictable.
But he's just is in the long line of these like idiot villains that Steven Seagal has to fight that are completely underprepared.
Like the twist about his office agent being part of it, because he calls the field agent to get him and her protective custody. So he sends out Randy Travis and the other guy and shit like that. And I thought to myself, as he was talking to the guy on the phone, I was like, yeah, he's going to turn on him. Yeah, no, he's a turncoat. No, there's no way he's not a bad guy. It was so predictable, man. I mean, and you're right. I was getting sick of the whole who's the turncoat and who's for real.
Well, everybody was. I mean, everybody ends up being in on it, outside of, I guess, like
the girls who work at the store
and the state and I guess like maybe state's prosecutors. Like I just, again, like we have ultimately a conclusion to a film where a man who is no way, shape, or form intimidating has Steven Seagal come up to him and shoot him and then grab him and go, "You're going to jail." And he's like, I guess so.
That was not even a fight, man.
Well, that's my point. But again, like there's not contrast that with something like Die Hard, where Alan Rickman and Bruce Willis don't have a hand-to-hand fight. They exchange words, and then Bruce Willis shoots Alan Rickman.
Rickman is smarter than that. He knows that he can't defeat him by hand.
I also think that movie just has better like secondary villains. Like all of the people in that movie are very memorable. Like you should have shot when you were talking, like all that
Thanks
shit.
For the advice,
right? All of that is a lot more memorable.
The Huey Lewis.
Yeah. There's plenty of memorable villains in that movie that have nothing to do with them getting 10 minutes of screen time. It's just they're given an opportunity to be interesting and they make the most of it. In this movie, they could have done that. They have Randy Travis. They have Travis Tritt. They have Mark Cawley, someone who we know is good in this kind of role from the Punisher movie. He kind of steals that movie in that scene. That's one of the most memorable scenes in that movie. I feel like if you, same, but I feel like if you don't know anything about that movie, but you've seen something from it, it's gotta be.
Well, he's featured in the trailer, so that's
right. But also that song, like again, like the trailer and the song are pretty memorable. And he's really good in that movie for the little bit of time he's given. And then they don't do anything with him here. They don't do anything with any of the villains here.
Basically, they're just there to be one of those inflatable punch bag things you had when you were a kid, where you punch them and they come right back up again. You just keep punching them and punching them and punching them, because that's all they did. There was no through line. It was just them. Like I said, it was a circle. They try to beat Seagal, they get defeated. They try it again, they get defeated. They try it again. You'd think at some point they'd say, "Fuck this, it's not worth it."
Well, they do. Eventually, Chris Christopherson's son turns on them.
Well, he's the one that turns state's evidence that gets Chris Christopherson arrested. And by the way, I haven't expected the two agents that Seagal had with him at the casino. I have expected them to turn him at the last minute.
I mean, again, why didn't they?
Because it had enough, man. Because it wasn't even a climax, man. Because
no, that's what I'm saying. Like there is, unlike Die Hard has an anti-climax, right? In a lot of ways. Like, I mean, what happens before he gets to Hans with him jumping off? I always forget how late into the movie he jumps off the building, but he jumps off the building very quickly before Hans Gruber. I mean, it's like very close to the end of the movie, right?
Yeah.
So that's the climax. And then Hans Gruber dying is just kind of like, it's the cherry on top,
but
right?
The difference, yeah.
It's not an action scene in this movie or that movie, but before this finale of this movie with Chris Christopherson, he just beats up some dudes in a bar. Like,
pretty much. I mean, Chris Christopherson's character basically just plays games at his fucking casino or whatever.
He a very small casino, might I add.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything. He's
wasted. He's a decent actor. I don't understand what they were thinking. Like, you cast, it's not like they just cast some
lot of
dude
good actors in this film that they waste. Terry Dean Stanton is a great actor. Margaret Helgenberg, a great actress. Stephen Lang, amazing actor.
It's not like they're casting Florian Persick Jr. here. They're casting people who have curbside appeal from their name alone, like Chris Christopherson. They don't do anything with them.
Makes you wonder why would they agree to be in this?
Well, why have so many country western stars in this movie? I don't get it. It's like, it's a very strange occurrence that there are this many in this movie. And oh, by the way, it's not like they're all over the soundtrack. It's just like, there's like a Marty Stewart scene. I guess it's because, again, they thought, well, this movie's set in Kentucky, so.
And maybe they wanted to sell soundtracks.
again, like they're not given enough to do. They're not given enough time to be interesting. Like,
I mean,
you have enough time to spend on Mark Helgenberger and Steven Seagal having a half-baked romance. You could have let Randy Travis or Travis Tritt or, God, again, even Mark Colley, give them 5 minutes more or anything. Because again, like I'm saying in Die Hard, that guy in Die Hard, the guy under the table, that's one scene and that's it. But that guy is super memorable to the point where I can tell you what he's wearing, kind of what he looks like. But that's a character actor. That's in this movie, you have actual entertainers. Yeah. Again, they might not be quote actors unquote full time, but Travis Tritt and Randy Travis know how to be entertaining. So let them do something. Don't just have them. All right, just stand there and don't say anything, or just do the man. I'm here to take you away with me. Like, all right.
But here's the thing. I think Randy Travis was brought on for cameo appeal. So people who watching the movie will be like, "Holy shit, that's Randy Travis."
Said who in 1997, though?
What?
Who is saying that in 1997?
I don't know. Some people are.
I'm going to let my cat in. After I let him out. Come on. What? You want in? I don't know what you want. Fucking dingus. Hell you want, bro?
Man, you don't
cast actors in movies in roles unintentionally. That's what a casting director is for. So they cast a bunch of country western stars in this movie for whatever reason. And that is one of the few things I remember about this movie is it has a random assortment of mid-90s country western singers, from the literal villain of the movie down. And it's super weird. And they don't do anything with it. And that seems like, again, a missed opportunity because the novelty
in the 90s.
But the novelty of it is not enough. There needed to be more to it. And again, they knew that in The Punisher. They cast Mark Colley and he can play guitar and sing, carry a tune. But they also gave him a look in that movie that was interesting. They gave him lines of dialogue that weren't just, "Hey, I'm going to get you. Yeah, I am gonna make sure you don't get me." Like, there you go. Like, he's very one-dimensional in this movie, and everybody is. The only person that doesn't come off as one-dimensional is kind of Steven Seagal.
I mean, Mark Colley has a bit of
they give most of it to Seagal, and they give some of it to Mark Helgenberger. And Harry Dean Stanton is miscast in this movie.
He is too good for this movie.
I don't understand the role he's playing because at times it seems like he's supposed to be like slow, maybe is what they would say in the 90s. But is that all a put on so that he could meet Steven Seagal?
That's what it was.
Okay. But the movie should have done a better job of explaining that.
They did that a lot in the 90s.
Sure.
Where you find out the slow guy isn't as slow as you think he is. Like in fucking Disturbing Behavior. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Okay. William Sadler is in it. He plays the janitor of this high school. And basically it's a film how they're taking like the fucking rejects and the stoners and all the undesirables of the high school, and they're kind of Stepford wivesing them into being perfect students. That's the plot. And so he plays the janitor who's kind of wise to it, but kind of just keeps to himself because he doesn't want to, But then James Marsden figures out, because he sees the book by Kurt Vonnegut that he's reading, and he figures out, oh, he's not a slow janitor. He's not crazy. He knows what he's doing. So that was the trope in the 90s, Sure. It was like, and it just gets tired.
I agree.
And I mean, Travis Tritt being in a film, basically, he's just doing what he usually did in 90s. He did it a lot in 90s films where he would just play a guy who's just in a scene where he's singing and the stuff is happening around him. Like he's the music background for the scene. Like
Yeah.
another film he did that in was Sergeant Bilko, where that's the only thing he did in the film was sing songs around the scene. And that was pretty just lazy way to use him. I mean, he has acted before. You know, they just don't want to take the time to make him interesting. They think they'll get by on name recognition alone.
Hey, this movie's fine. I think it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I mean, again, look, this is the last Steven Seagal movie to come out in theaters. So
No,
if
no.
you
Half Past Dead. We got Half Past Dead coming up.
it
We
doesn't
got
count. This is the movie that is his last starring role.
okay.
It's released in theaters. And if
Okay.
we view it through that lens, this movie is a failure because
We'll just say
it doesn't do a
killed
good
his
enough
career with Warner Brothers.
I think it was sustained problems from On Deadly Ground to then this.
Well, he kept having failing returns, so they figured we're not going to renew with this guy. He's just let him go.
And look, I haven't seen the next movie that we're watching, The Patriot. That's not the next episode we're doing, but that's the next one of these movies, the older ones. I've never seen it. I'm
No.
interested to see it because it's his first, straight to video, as it was called then. And my hope is that it will be of the similar production value of these straight to theater actual quote productions.
Yeah,
But
well, it's got Gaylord Sartain in it, and I like Gaylord Sartain.
I look, this movie is not terrible. I think this movie has gotten a bad rap for a lot of deserved reasons, but I think it's a good Steven Seagal performance. And I think if we're talking about Steven Seagal on a Steven Seagal podcast and we talk about his performance, and his performance is one of the most
ones.
yeah, it's not bad. He is perfectly likable. Again, his romance doesn't work, but he as a character, he has some good one-liners. The whole call your proctologist and rub the ointment on whatever hole hurts the most is a good line.
Well, the whole line about going to prison and calling his friend, to
like all that's great, and that's good action stuff that you expect from these kinds of movies. And he's actually believable here. But
this is the most likable he's ever been.
Yeah. I mean, those characters in those early movies were more just kind of like gruff dickheads.
Yeah, okay, well, let me just say he's the most charming he's been.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would agree. I wasn't doubting you when you said likable. I would agree. I mean, he's pretty likable. I mean, again, like the romance with Mark Helgenberg doesn't work, but his friendship with Harry Dean Stanton is not unbelievable, and they work together. Honestly, if they had taken Mark Helgenberg out of the movie and just given him and Harry Dean Stanton more time, that would have been, I think that would have worked more.
Or just make the character like Stephen Lang, just Stephen Lang and not her. But then again, that wouldn't make sense.
I mean, again, you just have you could have Stephen Lang be the secondary antagonist. He could still play a similar character where it's like he turns on Seagal, but you don't see it coming.
Yeah, but as opposed to he befriends Seagal.
Right. So you can kind of get something out of that, and then Seagal's like, "I knew you were, gonna turn on me, whatever the fuck." Right? Mm-hmm. Like there you go, and you don't need Mark Helgenberger, but you still keep Stephen Lang, and you don't waste Mark Helgenberger's time with a bad role that doesn't really serve her because she's a great actress, like you said. Again, everybody in this movie is a great actor in everything else that they've been in, and I don't think that some of them in this movie are bad. I just think a lot of them are not given anything to do.
Them very well.
No. Steven Seagal is kind of the only one, and that's because, again, he's given like 99% of the screen time.
Mm-hmm.
So final thoughts on Fire Down Below, Trevor?
I mean, it's not the worst film of his career. It's not the best film. It's a mediocre kind of middle ground, but it's definitely a good Seagal performance if you want to see Seagal trying to be a romantic.
And like Silver Age Seagal. Not Golden Age, but Silver Age Seagal.
It's Silver Age, but like in his other films, he never tries to get the girl. This film, he's trying to do these romantic and, sweet gestures.
I don't blame the actors. I blame the script and the
No.
editing. And look, for me, I think that this is in the conversation for the better Seagal movies because his performance is so good that it does kind of carry most of the problems of the movie on its shoulder and comes away.
Yeah.
Again, comes away in it closer to it being a win and less a failure, like so many of the more recent movies that he's
Yeah.
done. Where
Well, I
he's
said the same thing. I said it's not the actors, it's the script. This is none of the actors' fault. None of it. They all give the performances they were supposed to give.
I mean, very rarely is it the actors' faults, though. Like,
no, yeah, very rarely is it the actors' faults. Yeah, but he didn't. I was surprised because Jeb Stewart has written great films, but maybe his script was hacked to pieces.
his movie's pretty convoluted too. And again, like the message, like the whole thing of the movie is like it's not that interesting. Like, oh, they're dumping oil or dumping cyanide in the water.
It's white noise now, man, because we already had On Deadly Ground. Why are we doing this again?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a clue. Again, like there are like very few environmental action movies, but two of them exist in the 90s and two of them both happen to star Steven Seagal.
Yeah, because he was apparently big on like the environment.
On Deadly Ground was more preachy, a lot more preachy, but this movie is look, this movie a lot of the problems with this movie stem from the plot being kind of just not that exciting, and then everything stemming from that, and then you have problems occurring because it's set somewhere specific, so you start doing weird specific things to tailor it to where it's set.
Well, that's the problem.
I just don't think it works.
Same old thing. It's the same old thing. It's basically kind of like recycled material from other films.
And again, like not told in a particularly new, exciting, interesting, or unique way.
It just, yeah, it was not like there was not really much talk about the company itself that was polluting, or why they picked this place, or
just because it's his home. Why he would pollute his hometown makes no sense to me. But okay,
no, it makes no sense.
Like he would literally dump it anywhere but that.
Yeah, and it just the villain. You don't know shit about him, to be honest with you. I mean. Because he's in the film a lot, but you don't really know anything about him.
He likes women, and he has women hanging around him all the time. Another 90s trope.
But that's it.
That was another 90s trope, though.
Yeah. And he just doesn't have he doesn't have an original personality. He's every other fucking 90s henchman that you've seen. The big corporate. He could be intermatched with fucking Michael Caine.
I mean, again, but that's my Michael Caine was trying to do the same thing that Hans Gruber was doing. Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman created the character that these actors
but they're not smart. They're not smart enough.
I don't know what it is. I think that only worked once in a lot of ways.
But Hans Gruber, one played by Alan Rickman, who's a fucking great actor. But
so is Michael Caine.
But let me finish. It's the script. And he made that character very formidable because he was smart, he was cunning, and he had this plan mapped out like to the letter when he took over Nakatomi Plaza. He knew what he was going for. He had it he had it timed out basically. He was very, methodical. The villain in this one, there's no sense of wit to him. There's no sense of cleverness or formidability. It's just he's the big villain in the video game that you have to defeat. The easy villain in the video game you have to defeat. And like I said, going toe to toe to Hans Gruber. With them in the film, he was going up against Hans Gruber the whole time. It was a mind game. Him and Hans Gruber were playing mind games with each other.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know if having Seagal and Christopherson interacting more in the movie would have helped anything. I just don't
make the movie.
I just don't think that Seagal and these kinds of villains work. And I don't think that
No, because Seagal, you want to see him up against a villain that is equal to him. Or
it's more believable.
Yeah, you don't want to put him up against an old guy in his like 60s or 70s who is not known for being a tough guy.
Right. Because Seagal's at this point a tough guy.
And all throughout the film, he just has his henchmen do his dirty work for him, so you know he's no threat physically. Or, you know.
Look, I like yourself. This movie's fine. I think, again, we've seen worse, we've seen better, but look, the next movie that we talk about, I'm interested because it's a supporting role. It's not a role that Seagal is the star of, and that's Gut Shot Straight. And he plays a character named Paulie Trunks, and I've seen the poster, and he looks strange in the movie. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, this is the last traditional Seagal movie we're watching, more or less. This is the last movie that's like this. So, you know, it's sad. It's a kind of a sad moment because we're finally here where we know that the movies are not going to ever be I mean, we'll have like 2 movies that kind of exit wounds in From the Cradle to the Grave, or whatever the hell the other one is. Like, those movies are the last 2 that kind of he's in theaters, other than Machete. But, you know, this is his last starring role from 1997. See, almost fucking 20 plus years ago now. So
shit.
Yeah, it's wild if you think about it.
It's been
26 years.
26 years
since he had a starring lead role in a movie that came out in theaters. So
basically, you know, I mean,
a fully fledged adult who can vote and drink. So until the next time you hear Trevor and my voice talking all about Steven Seagal, you can find the 2 of us at weirdingwaymedia.com, where this show is available for your listening pleasure from episode 1 to this one. Trevor did mention that he's on episodes of the Culture Cast and the Bollywood Cinema Club. And I think that's it. Those are the only guests, right? And Projection Booth as well, which is the jewel in the crown of this network, as they would say. So until then, Trevor, people can find you on social media.
Bad Vertigo.
You can find me on social media, but I'm not going to tell you where because social media sucks. As for this show, you can find us wherever you get podcasts. Like, rate, and review the show because that's what helps us find our audience. And as always, catch you on the next episode.